and thank you very much for the invitation to address you today. I do so mindful of a couple of excellent speeches that you were privileged to receive yesterday, one from the Deputy Prime Minister, the Honourable Bill English, and the other from Rebecca Kitteridge, the Head of the Security Intelligence Service. I want to acknowledge the range of guests here today, particularly John Edwards, the Privacy Commissioner, Liz McPherson, other special guests and attending media. I want to start my presentation this morning by looking at how far we've come over the last 20 years or so managing identity and privacy, where we are headed, and the government's focus on digital delivery. One of the advantages of longevity in Parliament is that it gives you a certain perspective. The world has come a very long way since 1991, when, as a then opposition Labour MP, I promoted what was, and I think still remains, the largest ever private members' bill introduced in New Zealand, the Information Privacy Bill, which was a forerunner of what we now know as the Privacy Act. In those days, births, deaths and marriages records were kept in ledgers in courthouses all across the country, and people had to visit those courthouses in person to register their live events. Personal computers had just begun to appear on the desks of public servants, but government departments had at that point not yet got internal, let alone external email. iPads, iPhones or smartwatches were still the stuff of science fiction. Ministerial office diary management and email was about to move to a new technology called Lotus Notes. The idea of an email was as novel as it was rare. The height of sophistication was being able to fax information rather than photocopy it, and mass media campaigns were only just getting used to the idea of the fax attack. Protecting privacy then was about making sure groups like Reader's Digest did not put you on their mailing lists unless you specifically asked them to do so. Now, when you fast forward 24 years, we are living in a digital age of selfies, big data, data mining, increased focus on privacy, and an increased desire from the public to do business with the government and the private sector digitally. So how can we reap the benefits while minimising the risks of datification and data-driven innovation in the public, private and community sectors? Have our concepts of identity and privacy changed in the era of big data? How can we best protect fundamental values such as privacy and safety in an increasingly digitised and connected world? What are good practices of privacy and security by design? How do we achieve user-centric forms of managing identity within and across multiply digitally enabled relationships? And what are the implications for service providers? How can service providers build and develop privacy-friendly, secure, trusted, transparent and inclusive digital relationships with their customers? And finally, yes, the questions do stop for the moment. How can we protect our identity information against current and future cybersecurity threats in a resilient way? Against the backdrop of those questions, we must acknowledge that at the same time, New Zealanders want it to be easy to deal with government online. My constituents expect joined-up government. As the Minister of Internal Affairs and the MP for Oharu, I am struck constantly by the number of people I see who genuinely believe that their basic information is already accessible by a range of government agencies. Moreover, they seem quite surprised and in some cases become quite agitated. Look, I've already given that information to such and such a government agency, when they're asked to provide it again. So they not only expect their information to have been passed on, but they seem to think that is acceptable. but people want their privacy protected and are worried about information sharing. By way of contrast, people are far more concerned at a global level about the sharing of their personal information and the implication that nothing is private anymore, and that their every communication, indeed their every activity, is monitored in some way by an increasingly inquisitive state. And all this is occurring against a backdrop of a communications revolution, which is making the capacity to obtain and share information greater day by day, and where the whole process of government is increasingly technologically driven. Bruce Schneier's book, Data and Goliath, describes our challenge this way. This is a direct quote. Your cell phone provider tracks your location and knows who's with you. Your online and in-store purchasing patterns are recorded and reveal if you're unemployed, sick, or pregnant. Your emails and texts expose your intimate and casual friends. Google knows what you're thinking because it saves your private searches, end quote. Now that particular or special contradiction has real implications for New Zealand. New Zealanders are increasingly taken with the idea of doing their business with government, like paying their taxes or renewing their passports, online and at a time of their convenience. They like the freedom new circumstances are now providing and are pushing the government to do more in that space. New Zealanders want joined-up government, but they do not want to have to trek from agency to agency providing the same information over and over again. Instead, they want to have a digital experience with government where they can complete their transactions easily, where the customer is at the centre, just like their experience with the private sector, such as online shopping with supermarkets or the dozens of daily deal websites. We're at the forefront of nations when it comes to joined-up government services, services developed around customer needs and delivered across agency boundaries with the customer at the centre. The potential advantages of joined-up government are great, particularly to the individual, but so too are the risks. Information sharing is the way of the future, but it needs to be balanced by ensuring that our privacy and official information legislation and official functions like those of the Ombudsman and the Privacy Commissioner are kept fit for purpose to ensure they can effectively protect the individual from any risks inherent in the expansion of joined-up government. The balance between information sharing to enhance people's lives and information sharing to control people's lives is a fine one. It demands constant vigilance. There is, after all, now no turning back. So while joining up government services has advantages, there are also challenges. As we move increasingly into the digital world, we must ensure that we are following best practices in privacy and security so citizens can be genuinely confident their information is being protected. Protecting the privacy of personal information from improper access and use by government and other agencies has been a particular area of interest for me. From the time of the Information Privacy Bill nearly 25 years ago, through to my insistence in 2013 that the GCSB and the SIS become subject to 5 yearly independent reviews, the first of which was set up within the last week. We need proper and robust systems to protect the privacy of personal information from the intrusion of a coercive or prying state, and for clear accountabilities to be exercised when there are breaches, alongside the development of new ICT systems. Citizens will trust the government with their information only so long as they are confident the government will not misuse that information. And that raises separate questions beyond the immediate scope of today's discussion about the volume and nature of information being collected, and is it all actually necessary to be gathered? Last week, the United States House of Representatives voted to stop the mass collection of Americans' telephone data by the National Security Agency. I suspect New Zealanders would have a similar view about their telephone records, and that there will now be pressures on our intelligence agencies to stop any mass data collection programs they have underway, especially if that data is being made available on an indiscriminate basis to other countries. Now, part of providing the foundation of trust is having appropriate tools, one of which is RealMe, about which I will speak more a little later on. We've also created, in the last year or so, the role of Government Chief Privacy Officer, and in a world of jargon which seems to parallel the world of technology, the GCPO, to ensure that there is a long-term focus on setting privacy standards and building privacy capability within agencies. The GCPO's role is to provide leadership to the public sector in managing private information better, to engage with senior leaders in the public sector to raise awareness of privacy issues, and to engage with them about managing their agency risk better, building capability and knowledge across the state sector, and through all those activities providing assistance to the government, and assurance rather to the government, that privacy practice is improving. Russell Bernard was appointed as the GCPO last July, and his first key task was to establish expectations for chief executives in improving their privacy focus and performance. Chief executives are expected to develop strategies, roadmaps, and governance structures, to understand their information inventories and assess risk, to develop programs, processes, and policies to manage that risk, to build privacy into their audit and assurance programs. And the government, for its part, expects agencies to meet these expectations and expects the GCIO and the GCPO to help them achieve that culture change. At the same time as we work to protect privacy, we also need to unlock the value of the information we hold and to use it to make smarter, faster, evidence-based policy and business decisions for the benefit of all New Zealanders. We therefore need to be able to tap into the huge volumes of data we already hold at individual agencies and bring that data together more effectively for analysis and problem solving. And we need to have a data-driven approach to get to a point where the customer is better understood and, as a result, better served. So we've set up the New Zealand Data Futures Forum, a government working group to advise ministers on how the collection, sharing and use of business and personal information will impact public services in the coming years. The forum's role is to identify opportunities to maximise the benefits of big data and to sound any warning bells about things that we need to consider on the data management front. One of the government's priorities is to deliver better public services within tight fiscal constraints. We're aiming to improve areas that are fundamental to the well-being of New Zealanders, such as their healthcare, their education, social services, and above all, the strengthening of our economy. And the key to doing more with existing resources lies in productivity, innovation, and increased agility to provide services. So agencies need to develop new business models. They need to work far more closely with each other as one coherent system, and to harness new technologies in order to meet emerging challenges. There's already a quiet revolution underway in the provision of public services. Under the guise of its Better Public Services program, the government is deliberately changing the way in which public services are delivered, and also, and perhaps more importantly, the way the public service identifies and designs the services it provides. As the Minister of Internal Affairs, I'm responsible for Result Area 10 of the Better Public Services program, but that relates to the provision of online government services. Our objective is to make it easy for New Zealanders to complete their transactions with government online, to deliver integrated digital services designed around the needs of New Zealanders, rather than requiring New Zealanders to be experts in how government departments work and where they are located. According to the United Nations e-government survey released in July 2014, New Zealand already shows, and I quote, an exemplary commitment to the provision of transactional services, end quote. We're ranked 9th in the world, up significantly from just a couple of years ago. We are especially well regarded for the work we have done on cloud computing and the use of Creative Commons license for open data. Last year, we joined with Britain, Estonia, South Korea and Israel to form the D5 group of nations to promote the delivery and expansion of online government services, and already we play an active part in that group. Now, all this, of course, will excite the digital enthusiast who knows what it means, but it has little or considerably less resonance with the average citizen. That is the challenge of digital transformation. It cannot just be about system upgrades. It has to be about demonstrating a positive, specific and noticeable benefit to the individual to be valuable and sustainable. One such demonstration in the New Zealand context is that we have recently renewed the 300,000th adult passport online. That percentage of online renewals is rising steadily, with the time involved dropping dramatically to just 2 to 3 days, compared to around 7 to 8 days for a more traditional review. And my office receives a constant stream of positive feedback about the Passport Online renewal service. New Zealand is one of the only, if not perhaps the only country where you can renew your adult passport entirely online, and it's a service we want to expand in the years ahead. Thousands of parents are now registering the birth of their child online through birth registration online, maybe using their tablet or their smartphone instead of preparing the paper form. And the days where they had to go to the local courthouse, as I said right at the beginning, have long since passed. The take-up rates for online birth registration are already heading towards 80% after just a few weeks of operation of that scheme. Parents are reporting that the new form is a much easier way to register their child. And child registration is an important step so that children born in New Zealand qualify for health, educational and other benefits. At the same time as registering your child's birth, you can also get an IRD number for your child. The government is in a unique position with respect to identity-related information. Because we register life events and issue passports, the government is in this extraordinary position with regard to identity-related information. It's not only government business that's being transacted online, though. People's daily business and life generally now is being transacted online, and that has all of the attendant privacy and security risks to which I referred earlier. As more and more processes and transactions move towards an online virtual environment, citizens are amassing a vast, detailed digital identity. That identity comprises a large amount of detail about inherent characteristics, such as their date of birth, acquired information, such as their home address, and other information, such as their purchase history. And the importance of that information is increasing. Enormous potential benefits are possible from the use of digital identity data, driven by process efficiencies and product innovation that in turn is related to better understanding of consumer needs. Alongside the expanding digital identity, the risks of misuse of that identity equally are increasing significantly. So there's a fundamental trade-off here for consumers that we need to be debating. While many people share information quite willingly on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media sites, consumers are also concerned about how their data is used and the financial and privacy risks of its misuse. But they seem willing, indeed enthusiastic, to disclose information where they can see benefits and appropriate privacy controls are in place. So to deliver integrated services and to protect privacy at the same time, we need the right tools to do the job. And one of those tools is RealMe. It started back in 2007 or earlier, I think, as the government log-on service, when a visionary group of public servants at the time foresaw a need to provide joined-up services and developed a tool to meet that need. It was rebranded under the iGov brand in July 2009 when the service was transferred from the State Services Commission to the Department of Internal Affairs. In 2011, New Zealand Post became the private sector commercialisation partner, and in July 2013, the iGov login service was rebranded as RealMe, and the RealMe verified account was launched. RealMe now provides tools that can be used by both the public and private sectors to enable the identity information to be verified by agencies at the customer's request. A RealMe verified identity is free, reasonably easy to obtain, and can be used to open bank accounts with a number of the trading banks, including the BNZ and the TSB, and to enrol to vote with the Electoral Commission. Students will soon be able to use a RealMe verified identity when they apply to StudyLink for allowances and loans, and we are currently looking at ways to make it easier to obtain and use a RealMe verified identity without compromising the integrity of the product. For example, when you renew your passport. More and more people are now choosing to get a RealMe verified identity, although the uptake still needs to grow dramatically. So I would say if you have not already done so, I would urge you to get one, because as more and more services are offered by government and the private sector, you will find it much easier to transact online rather than posting or taking your identity documents into a branch. RealMe's strength lies in its design, which enables a seamless digital service for customers without creating a single database of information about an individual. The customer has control, of their personal information, and they can see where that information is being shared. So we've developed RealMe to operate within strict requirements for privacy protection and information security. In general, it is a world-class solution tailored to the New Zealand environment. It is consistent with the Electronic Identity Verification Act 2013, which enables electronic identity verification online. It is consistent with the Privacy Act 1993, which allows only data matching between departments in very limited circumstances. It's also consistent with the Anti-Money Laundering and Countering Financing of Terrorism Act 2009, plus a range of national and international standards. RealMe also helps prevent identity fraud, because every time the department verifies an identity and issues the electronic identity credential that lies at the heart of the verified RealMe account, we add a notation to the individual's births, deaths, marriage, immigration, passport and citizenship record related to that individual, which prevents them from being reused by a fraudster to get a second ID. The government is strongly committed to the Result 10 goals to make it easier for citizens to complete common transactions with government online. And more RealMe will be at the heart of that as people use RealMe literally to prove who they are. As we progress, the ability to share information in a single transaction will be a critical enabler for the delivery of integrated cross-agency services. The confidence we have that the person that we are dealing with is in fact the person they claim to be will require something like RealMe as the critical component to achieve that objective. And that fundamental goal is that by 2017, an average of 70% of New Zealanders' most common transactions with government will be completed in a digital environment. We're already well on the way towards achieving that target, and we're confident we can get there by 2017. And at that point, we will have a one-stop online shop for all government advice and support that New Zealanders can access for information on how to run and grow their businesses, and we expect business costs from dealing with the government to correspondingly reduce by about 25% by 2017. So we live in exciting times. That old Chinese curse continues to be relevant. The possibilities that digital technology give us are making a real difference to the lives of our citizens. But we've always got to remember that that need for convenience has to be balanced by the protection of privacy. That is going to be the ongoing challenge. And it's important, and that's why conferences like this are valuable, that it remains at the front of mind, that it is constantly discussed, that the boundaries are tested and pushed, and a consensus driven to emerge. It is about a balance, and I'm confident we will get the balance right, and I'm confident that conferences like this can play a critical part in helping us both give people the exciting opportunities that the digital future promises, but also ensure that their identity and their integrity as individuals is not compromised in the process. Thank you again for the opportunity to address you this morning.